All right, it is 3 o'clock, at least by my cell phone. So we will get this started. So we have plenty of time for our presenters and the opportunity for questions and answers at the end. Today's topic is a leader's guide to natural disasters. We know that we've had a number of states that have been engaged with natural disasters, from hurricanes, floods, and fires, tornadoes, and a variety of unfortunate events. And so today I would like to introduce Dr. Nick Place, who is the Dean of Extension at the University of Florida. And Nick will be leading us through this conversation this afternoon. So Nick, I'll turn this over to you.
All right, thanks, Ed. I appreciate that, and welcome everybody. We always appreciate the opportunity to talk about Eden and the great things that are happening nationwide, and that's really what this session is all about, as Ed was talking. So I'll be kicking this off to get us started, and then I have three partners in crime working with me this afternoon. After an introduction, I'll hand it over to Cheryl Skolhaus from the University of Wisconsin. She's currently serving as a chair of Eden and doing a wonderful job with that. And then we'll be hearing from Angie Lindsay, who is our University of Florida Eden point of contact, to talk about some of the things that we've experienced here in Florida, not only at the University of Florida, but also with FAMU in relation to Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Michael. And then Ashley Mueller from University of Nebraska-Lincoln is also on, and she'll be sharing about some of the recent experiences there with all the flooding happening in the Midwest. And the whole point of that is to help make the connection about how this Eden network works at the national level. So Mark, if you advance a slide. So Eden, just to remind you, is the EDEN, is Extension Disaster Education Network. And this is really emphasizing and looking at how do we focus our extension resources at the national level on disaster education. Next slide, Mark. So we got started with this effort, coincidentally, with the floods back in 1993 that were happening in the Midwest, and recognizing that something needed to be done to help our extension colleagues there at that point in time. That we all have resources and connections and things we could do to help our colleagues there in the Midwest. There was a grant from USDA CSRES that went to Iowa and Illinois and Missouri to help kickstart this effort. There was a North Central Regional Committee, and then now from this effort in 1993, it's evolved into this national system of collaboration and support that we now all know and appreciate. So at this point, I'm going to be changing slides and handing it over to Cheryl, who will be talking specifically about her role as the chair and some of the things that we're working on in Eden. So Cheryl, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Place, and thank you everyone else for having me on today. It's an honor to be the Eden Chair this year, and I continue to learn a lot, not only about disaster education, about the great work that all of your extension systems are doing to help those local individuals and communities. I just want to walk through some of the basics of Eden, just for those of you who may not be as familiar. Back in 2014-ish, each of the regions identified a director that met with the Eden Executive Committee to help us with some strategic planning. And from that, we have our 2015 to 2020 strategic plan. So the mission of Eden is to reduce the impact of disasters through research-based education. Pretty basic mission, but an easy one for us to focus on. The mission continues with some of our goals. You know, since we have internal part to Eden and an external part to Eden, our biggest part of our mission is our networking of Eden delegates and other extension professionals. We really want to be sure that this network is about the needs of those involved with extension, helping them work in this area, helping share experiences and information. and being sure that that information is, timely and credible. So a lot of work on communications and resource sharing across the Eden system. We also work a lot with other agencies from federal, state, local, and we want our extension staff across the country also to understand who those agencies, those local partners are, so that it's not during the time of that emergency, that disaster, or part of the programming that they meet those individuals. And it's good because it helps us also as a network make contacts, bring new resources in, look at things as they're emerging. So we really do look for those partnerships. And then with anticipating future educational needs, it's really that we need to keep looking down the road, looking at some of the new research. A lot of events of recent years are bringing out some new research about communities, about families, about stress, and we need to keep looking and working together to address what our educational needs are for the future. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to be sure that we talked about the Eden membership. I think sometimes we've gone through Eden throughout the years, but Eden membership is really the extension serving institutions. It's not that individual delegate. It's not what you may hear of as a POC or a point of contact. It's the institution. And so Eden really is the 1862 land grant institutions, the 1890 land grant institutions, the Sea Grant extension programs, and then each of those institutions identify a point of contact for the business purpose side of the network and a key contact person. And each institution can determine who is their delegate and how delegates work within the network. We also have made some changes to our operating guidelines in recent years to allow for some non-extension delegates. It doesn't give them a voting, so to speak, within the network, but allows individuals to come and be active with Eden and be a part of helping strengthening those resources, working in the communities. So we have some additional non-extension delegate roles and types currently. The membership then is also representative with an executive committee, and the executive committee just met last week as a mid-year contact. So there are representatives on the executive committee from each of the different regions representing our committees. We have liaisons, like Dr. Place is our ECOP liaison, Beverly Samuels is our NIFA liaison, and so with those liaisons it helps bring the dimensions and discussion to the table from all those different institutions. Next slide, please. Dr. Place already touched upon some of the history here, and I think it's important as we will be celebrating our 25th anniversary here, and you'll be seeing more as we talk about our 25th anniversary and some plans. But if you look at from 1993 to 2005, work to get all the states involved, the territory, those institutional members signed up. I remember my first annual meeting. Dr. Jones was a part of that meeting, and I'm sure when he was the chair of Eden, he helped get some of those institutions and agreements signed up. So we have a lot of early milestones, and now I'm going to take a time leap on the next slide to talk about some of our current focuses. So this past year in 2018 was the first time that USDA NIFA did a cooperative agreement that was on a competitive basis, and so we are pleased to share that it was awarded to Purdue University Extension, and Dr. Henderson, the director there, is the PI on the project. It is part of the Food and Agricultural Defense Initiative funding. And so they've put together a pretty extensive work plan, and just to highlight a couple of key parts to be aware of is that Looking at agri-security and community resiliency, they've set up some plans for listening sessions to get some feedback as we start moving towards that next round of strategic planning. Also an advisory council to help us with, looking outside of ourselves plus inside, and how we can help with those emerging needs and issues. There's also plans within the second year of that work plan to take some of that funding and put out for competitive grants amongst the institutions in the Eden network, and to help develop the resources that we all will have to share. So that'll be exciting as we work towards identifying those needs and then getting some further growth in our resource development. One of the changes to the operating structure that was made in 2018 was that we had what we called program area work groups, and we have now moved those to program area committees, meaning that they are part of that executive committee, the chairs are, and that they have standing representation within the work and the scope. You're going to recognize those three areas as they very much reflect the program areas of extension, and know that your delegates are welcome to be involved in any of these program area committees. It's where we help identify resources, we share focuses. It's a great place to be active on those committees and come and learn what other people in their program area are doing. So really welcome people to hop in and learn about and participate in those program area committees. Since 2010, there has been some work being done with the 1890s, and I believe Dr. Carolyn Williams is also part of the ECOP group here. And so she has been active along with several other key players in this 1890 advisory groups. And they're really trying to focus their resources in on some of the underserved populations, some of the audiences that they help serve. And that's bringing some great work to that resource development for Eden to have and to share. So those are some current focuses and a few more as we switch to the next slide. The next slide that I'm not seeing, and hopefully the rest of you are, is talking about professional development and focusing in on our extension staff members. Here we go, thank you so much. Having the chance to help, extension staff with professional development through annual meeting and professional development webinars. This year's annual meeting is being hosted by Washington State Extension and will be September 16th through the 19th in Spokane. Great opportunity to learn as pre-conference, post-conference, different seminars and sessions. And then for those, we know travel is limited, trying to help with professional webinars. Improving our communications is one of the goals of the new FATI grant. And so we have a website. We're changing the website up a bit in this next grant. So the current website, you have the URL there, but look for within about June timeframe for some changes and announcements on a new website. We're also going to a quarterly newsletter to help get the good work shared a little bit more internally to start with. Also would like to share that with Beverly Samuel's help from the USDA NIFA, we have a knowledge area now, so it's knowledge area 807. So as you're looking at your reporting structure, that you can look to use that knowledge area. Next slide, please. So we do know that all disasters are local, and we really want your staff to be ready for and that we're there to help when those disasters do happen. This was one from last fall here in Wisconsin in this picture. If we could go to the next slide, please. Also would like to share that when there is a response situation going on, we do have a system we call response notes, and we're using a Qualtrics system this year as our website gets revised. But at any point in time, if your extension service, one of your, somebody has something they would like to share with USDA NIFA, with the officers of Eden, you're looking for help, you've identified some need, you've got something that you accomplished, you can, submit it through this response note system, and it goes to the officers and Beverly Samuels at NIFA along with Bill Huffman. So it's kind of our way to help call home, but also a way to help collect some of the positive works that you're doing in any of the phases of the disasters that you may be, working in with your extension services. So with that, I should be turning it over to Angie.
Great. Yes, great. Thank you, Cheryl. And thank you very much for having me today. Again, my name is Angie Lindsay, and I am the point of contact for the Eden point of contact for the University of Florida and IFAS. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about what I like to call a tale of two storms. In the past 2 years, Florida has experienced two major hurricanes, with Hurricane Irma in 2017 and then Hurricane Michael that impacted our Florida Panhandle in 2018. I want to talk a little bit about some of the work that our extension did in conjunction with the Eden network. And so, Mark, if you want to advance the next slide. Okay, so mine has a delay as well, so I'll just go ahead and keep, there we go. To give you a little bit of information about Hurricane Irma, she made landfall twice on September 10th, 2017. The first time she was a Category 4 hurricane in the Florida Keys, and then a Category 3 in Marco Island, which is in the southwest part of Florida. Measured wind speeds of 120 to 142 miles per hour. Hurricane winds covered 80 miles with tropical storm winds covering 400 miles. 7,000 shelters, 54 of our 67 counties were evacuated. So it gives you an idea of how much of the state that she did impact. 6.7 homes were without power, 64% of our state. Many of those homes were without power for almost a month. 84 related death, and then $60 billion in cost overall. Mark, you can go ahead and advance the next one. Great, thank you. So the efforts by the University of Florida IFAS Extension and also in conjunction with Eden as well, some pre, during, and post Irma efforts that we did. Of course, with any disaster, information is key. So trying to get information out to our extension agents in all 67 counties, as well as pushing that information out to the communities as well. So we had some internal documents that we have that we keep updated that we try to get out as well. But there were some specific things that a lot of our extension folks were looking for that we didn't necessarily have internally. And we really utilized information from our Eden partners and from the resource database that Cheryl mentioned on the Eden website. It was one of those things where I was constantly searching the Eden resource, and if I didn't find it there, I contacted an Eden partner and asked if they had a fact sheet or something that we could get out to our communities to help us prepare for Irma. We worked very closely with state and federal emergency management and FEMA. I will say that the work that we did with FEMA and some of the state emergency management really helped prepare us for a lot of the work that we did with the state and emergency management with FEMA for Hurricane Michael. We were meeting needs for information, supplies, county extension offices, and within communities. I was in contact a good bit with a lot of the Eden partners, especially Texas A&M, who had just gone through Harvey. In fact, some of their flood fact sheets and information that they had developed post-Harvey, we just used that information. We were in need of it. We printed them out and pushed them out to our counties because it was great information and it was good to have on hand, and we needed something very quickly as well. So it was great to share information with these folks and have that information out there. And it was great to have the Eden contacts that we could reach out to make sure that that information was out there and it was most up to date as well. In addition, right after Irma, the Eden conference was in October 2018, and Dr. Place and I both were able to attend that and talk about some of the work that we did post Irma, and also talk about the information that we got from the Eden partners. So we were grateful to be able to talk about that experience and have some conversations regarding best management practices and lessons we learned with the other Eden point of contacts that were there at the conference as well. I did want to kind of talk about some of the internal work that we did. We developed a group me text for our extension family that was able to keep track of everyone that within our extension family, to keep track of what the needs were, and especially right after Irma came through, what the gaps were, what the needs were, how best we could help in filling some of those gaps and helping some of our extension folks out. We had a needs gaps form for areas that folks were able to fill out. Of course, a lot of internet, and with the electricity being out, 64% of the state being out of electricity, some of those forms we were actually doing in Gainesville. We were taking the information and filling it out just to have a database of information. Something that did come up that we were kind of surprised, and we frankly weren't really prepared. We kind of reactively handled this, is the mental health assessments. One of the things that we were hearing from our extension agents was the need for mental health help, basically. One of our extension agents reached out to us and said, do you have any mental health information that I can pass out to people, especially some of our citrus farmers who had already dealt with citrus greening, and their groves were now healthy and they had good healthy trees again, only to have Irma come through and take those trees out. One citrus farmer said to one of our extension agents that he thought he was going to commit suicide. He was so upset. So we immediately kind of went into reactive mode of how can we get information out and help these folks. And through some work that we've done in the past after the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, we worked with a researcher in the University of Maryland who looked specifically at mental health after disasters, especially in seafood workers and farm workers, Dr. Lynn Gratton. We had her come down and assess some of our extension agents and determine what those mental health needs were. And from that, we have actually just recently got some money from the state to do some mental health first aid workshops through around the state to not only prepare our extension agents, but others within the public for mental health needs post-disaster. So, and we've had great response from that. But from Irma, I think one of the biggest takeaways from Irma, I say this a lot, one of the biggest takeaways from Irma is that we needed to work on our proactive, how do we better prepare our agents and our extension for these types of disasters. And talking with a lot of the Eden point of contacts and to the Eden folks at the conference post Irma, several folks said to us, y'all need a COOP plan. You need a continuation of operations plans. So looking at several templates, we kind of put together our own based upon some templates. Thank you to Nebraska. I relied heavily upon Ashley on their template that I thought was really effective. And we've developed COOP plans for our state as well as our extension districts also. So it's been really helpful. And Mark, you can go through these other slides pretty quickly. They're just some pictures of some of that from we have. Our extension offices were used as donation drop-off. That's the Collier County Extension Office, which is Naples, Florida, right where Irma made her second landfall, and our extension office was, as you can see, was severely damaged, but I'm happy to report they are doing their grand reopening this coming Thursday. So we're excited they're finally getting back in their building. And you can advance. And this is citrus. And I believe the next slide's greenhouses. Yes. And then the next slide is Michael. So 13 months later, we were able to use some of the lessons learned from Irma and helping us prepare for Michael. Although Michael was a bit different in the fact that whereas with Irma, we really had a preparation time of about a week to 10 days. We knew that Irma was coming to Florida. We just didn't know where. With Michael, the administration team actually had a phone call on Sunday to talk about the tropical storm that was heading towards the Panhandle. And by Wednesday, it was a Category 3 hurricane. So this storm escalated and became very powerful very fast. And so the preparation time was not the same with Irma, but we were able to get some things going that we learned from Irma in order to prepare for Michael. Just some quick facts about Michael: made landfall on October 10th, Mexico Beach, east of Panama City. Sustained winds of 155 miles per hour. It was the strongest hurricane on record to make landfall in the Florida Panhandle, the fourth most powerful hurricane to hit the United States. It was almost a Category 5. Damage from wind and storm surge, whereas a lot of damage from Irma was flooding and storm surge as well. So a lot of damage from Michael is from actual wind and storm surge as well, and about 43 deaths as well. Go ahead, Mark. Thank you. So something, and again, I say a lot that I think with Irma we learned preparing and how best to prepare ourselves. And I really do feel like with Michael we have learned how best to recover. Overall, Michael impacted about 84 of our faculty and staff and their families in those county offices and those county areas, 4 of which actually lost their homes. So it impacted us personally, which was something that I don't think that we were prepared for, and we certainly didn't have any kind of standard of operation procedures for. Again, we work really closely with state emergency management and FEMA. I will say that this was the first time for me anyway that some of our offices were working this closely with FEMA. So we relied very heavily on our Eden partners to determine some advice and some best management practices for working with FEMA. Talked a lot with Mississippi State, with Tom Ball there, who gave us some pointers and some things that we needed to learn as far as working with FEMA and things that we needed to do. 4 of our county offices served as FEMA distribution points. County offices were used as pods, and 5 county offices were set up as actual FEMA resource sites as well. So it was a learning experience for us, and we're grateful to our Eden partners to help us navigate some of those systems that we had never had been confronted with before. Also, the agricultural assessments, which is a major part of Extension after any disaster, is assessing the agricultural impacts. We really relied heavily on some best management practices from our Eden partners, as many of our Extension agents in this area were personally impacted. They weren't able to go out and do some of the assessments. So we were talking with some of our Eden partners about how they brought other Extension folks in and how we can best maybe utilize our Eden partners to do some of these assessments in the future. So it's definitely something that we're looking at and putting in some of our plans also. And then lastly, the Eden conference was actually, this time around, was actually right after Hurricane Michael. So we were unable to attend, but I was able to join them via Zoom and actually do a virtual presentation, and was able to sit in a friend's home in Tallahassee and literally give them a presentation from what I was seeing being in the area. And so the information and the support they provided us, as well as a lot of the donations that our Eden partners sent, we're grateful for. And I'm also grateful for Kimberly Davis, which is our Florida A&M University 1890 Eden point of contact, who was able to attend Michael and was able to talk about some of the efforts that we were doing there as well. And the other slides are just some pictures as well, Mark, if you want to go through those. Trees being down was a major impact, obviously, after Hurricane Michael. I'm sure many of you have seen the pictures. And the next slide. This is some of the distribution and donation sites in Washington, Jackson, Liberty, and Calhoun counties, which are some of the rural counties in that area. And this is another slide of some of the distribution sites also. Go ahead with the next slide. And this is actually some of our Extension folks out doing assessments of the aquaculture that's in the Panhandle area and some of those Gulf Coast counties there. And go ahead, the next slide. I want to mention before I turn it over to Ashley some of the work also of Florida A&M University. Like I said, Kimberly Davis is the actual FAMU Eden person for FAMU. And just wanted to talk about some of the work that they did as well. They provided the human care element to victims of Hurricane Michael. They hosted a series of disaster recovery events in Bay, Franklin, and Gadsden counties. They were serving hot meals and a donation drive and providing guidance and assistance throughout the Panhandle. With them being there within Tallahassee, I know that they were working for their own personal impacts as well, but they were out helping folks as well through social media, seminars, and one-on-one consultations as well. Go ahead with the next slide. And this is just a picture of some of the work that they were doing out in the areas as well. And they were also working very closely with the state and federal emergency management as well as our extension, working together also. So just wanted to make sure that I included the efforts of both the cooperative extensions within Florida as well. And I'm going to ask Ashley if she wants to go ahead and talk about some of her recent experiences as well.
Sure. Thank you, Angie. I don't have any slides or pictures yet. That will come at some point. But I just thank you all for allowing me to be part of the panel today to share about what we're currently dealing with in Nebraska in the Midwest. So to give you all a picture, you may have heard or seen about the bomb cyclone. That is a thing that we experienced, and really to set the stage, what we saw in Nebraska at least a couple of weeks ago, we had a lot of snow on the ground, had a storm system come through that brought a lot of snow in the western part of the state, a lot of rain in the eastern part of the state, and then warm temperatures, which then led to a very fast snow melt, which then caused a lot of our local rivers to swell and then just created a whole lot of havoc after that. My personal experience, so I live just outside of Omaha, and being the Extension State Disaster Education Coordinator, so I get to work with our folks across all of our program areas. But in my specific situation, we were on an island of about 25,000 people, water everywhere, and could not leave or go for about 4 days. And so this was a really interesting time for both my husband, who's also in Extension, and me, because we were called upon by our local emergency management to help, because resources were unable to get into our community. And so with what I train and teach in Extension, I teach about volunteer management and opening up volunteer reception centers. Volunteer hours and tracking those become really important when we're talking about federal aid. And so I had an opportunity to set that up with some of our community partners in Fremont, where I live. And then my husband is an agriculture educator. His role is written into our local and state plan in the county emergency board. And so he was brought into our local emergency operations center, and essentially as an ag educator, then coordinated and had to handle some of those agricultural issues coming through. We had a farmer just east of town that had lost about 700 hogs. And so he had to help with logistics and coordination of carcass removal and disposal. In addition to, of course, being on an island, we could not get grocery trucks in and out of town, and had to do grocery inventory, work with all of those stores so that they could arrange a convoy to be able to come into the only open road, limited access for that, which was a unique experience, and something that we kind of have joked, right, is no extension training could have prepared us, for particularly being called upon by the emergency manager. But I share that because it is a possibility. When we think about what Cheryl has talked about and what Angie had said too, these disasters are local, and there is no, better organization that is positioned than Extension to operate locally, right? We spend time with the people in our communities, we reach them in our programs, but we also socialize with them outside of work. And so understanding that key element, that disasters are local, is really important when we look at the long-term recovery of our communities, counties, and even our states. And so to specifically share too, I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention the network part of Eden and how important the relationships are. Extension is relational. We build relationships with our clients and with our colleagues. And I think that is something that I have just learned in, the past couple of weeks in operating in this kind of, response and then moving to the recovery mode, is that Extension is family. And I certainly appreciate all of the personal reach outs that I received when my colleagues, North Dakota, Florida, Wisconsin, Texas, were reaching out and wondering how they could help from afar. And I think that was really a touching moment for me to just know that, as a system, we're all dealing with this here in Nebraska, and our neighboring states are too. But there are people watching out for us and willing to offer and share and do a training for us, a virtual training, so they can help just-in-time education for my colleagues. And so I just wanted to highlight the power of the network and how I appreciate that folks are ready and willing, and these relationships have been established so that they can really take care take care of each other. So that was just a big shout out to the network, and just appreciation. And hopefully those of you that have engaged in the network or your faculty are, just a big thank you for encouraging that and supporting that, because it really is times like this where we realize, this is beyond what one position or what one extension system can handle. And we really need that community amongst ourselves in this land grant system to be able to work and support each other.
Okay, Mark, if you can go to the next slide, I'll wrap up, and then Ed, I'll hand it over to you for some Q&A. So thank you to Cheryl, Angie, and Ashley for your excellent presentations. And I really hope that this has been good for the listeners that we have here today to really typify what Eden is all about and the power of our national system that we have, and the importance of the relationships and other kind of things that these three presenters talked about. So a couple take-home messages that I would put out there to our extension directors, administrators. If you don't already, I'd encourage you to really get to know and understand the value of Eden and the importance of having these connections and relationships that you just heard about here in the last few minutes. I would ask that to take a look at your points of contact and delegates and make sure that they're up to date, and then also ensure that they are actively engaged. And there's lots of different ways they could be engaged, from being part of the executive committee and those kind of things that Cheryl talked about, to being on listservs and other kind of things where there's information that is being sent out and received by people that are part of this Eden network. So be sure that the people in your state, your institutions, are actively engaged and involved in this effort, because God forbid a time when your state might need to rely upon these resources and relationships. And then lastly, if there's any kind of questions that you have, ways we can support you, or anything such as that, please let us know. We're here to help advance these efforts. And it's really been a privilege to be the ECOP liaison for Eden over these past few years that I've been in this position. So with that, Ed, we'll transition to the next slide and have some time for Q&A if anybody has any.
Great. Thank you, Nick. And thank you to Cheryl and Angie and Ashley for your presentations and perspectives. On a personal note, I had been involved with Eden for many years and found it to be an incredible asset to challenges we had when I was in North Carolina. So I think it's one that we want to take very seriously as an organization. We'll open it up now for questions for any of our panelists or conversation among any of the participants today. So are there questions?
Hello, Ed. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to comment on the advantage of establishing the 1890 advisory group that has done for our 1890 system. Funding was made available through Eden, and we were trying to increase the number of 1890 participants and engagement in the Eden conferences. And so we had a meeting in Houston, I think 2 years ago, and we got 13 of the 19 institutions, and that was a great history-making event. And as a result of that, because of our efforts in developing our strategic plan, we have also received additional funding to move forward and support at the federal level, particularly with FEMA. So FEMA came and did a training for us last year, and then we're getting ready to continue that training to where it's engaging the faith-based communities and disaster education, because that's usually the first stop. When something happens, where do people go? They go to the church. They know that's a safe place. That's a place that's in their community that will welcome people who are in need. So I just wanted to share the benefits of our organization and the support from Eden. And we are having more to attend the meetings. And we just recently several of the institutions submitted a capacity building grant. So some great things are happening as a result of this relationship. And an extension family is the best family in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carolyn, for sharing that. I think we've made great strides and we continue to build that family. Any other
Carol?
comments, questions?
So just to add to that, Ed, to what Carolyn is saying, thank you for bringing that up. And we've been really intentional about trying to elevate the work that we're doing with 1890s on behalf of Eden. And I've been really happy with how that's progressing forward. So thank you. And Angie touched on this, but here in Florida, we've had really good connections with FAMU, and we really see this as an important thing of working together to address these major disasters and storms that are hitting us. And one of the things that Angie did not talk about, but during these last two storms, we intentionally started these early morning calls with the whole extension team, and to talk about, get an assessment about where things are, what things need to be done, how can we support one another. And those have been really valuable, and Vonda has been part of that, and from FAMU. And so that's been a very good thing, very good practice that we put in place here in Florida.
Excellent. Others?
Ed, while people are coming up with their questions, I would just like to add in that there is currently Smith-Lever special needs funding. That the announcement, the RFA, just went out, I believe, March 29th. And so as you're looking at your extension services, you might have some special projects that can help focus in for, I know like Mississippi did ICS training for their extension staff using these funds. Other ones have used them to help develop web resources. Oregon is leading a group currently with 2018 funding related to some of the earthquake types of materials that are needed. So, check the special Smith-Lever special needs funding applications, the RFA, out. They are due on May 28th. So it's a 60-day announcement, but a great opportunity to help your extension service focus in on some special projects in disaster education.
Cheryl, thank you for bringing that up. It is a valuable resource that people can latch onto and use that to help foster their own capacity related to disasters. So take advantage of that, folks.
Ed, this is Nick, and I actually have a question for Ashley. So Ashley, thanks for what you shared. And I guess for the benefit of all of us, is there anything that you all need there now in the Midwest that we can be helping you with?
Thanks for asking, Dr. Place. I think just, as we start to move into this long-term recovery piece, I think we recognize our strengths as a system, but there are certain maybe program areas or topics, right, that we are a little bit lean on. And so I think that's where we'll begin to turn more to the network to help us figure those out. In particular, I think about housing. We don't have a housing specialist, but that is something that we can lean into the network for, right, and information. And then, of course, just encouraging, folks on here and to encourage those that are in your organizations. I know we make a lot of touch points at annual meetings, at the different conferences, just to check in on their peers as well. I think it means a lot for me, but just in the colleagues I've talked to, it means a lot as well.
Very good. Additional comments and questions?
You guys, the whole time I did not realize I had to unmute myself within the conversation and not just on my phone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm Crystal. I'm calling from Southern University. It's a new bullet within my job description. When she just mentioned the Smith-Lever Special Needs Grant, I pulled it up really quickly and I see it's 1862 land grant. Is there a comparable one for the 1890s?
Okay, I have to find my unmute button too. Not that I'm aware of, and I know that question has come up before, but it does allow that, the 1890s, that there can be partnerships within these special needs grants. And Dr. Williams, are you still on? Are you aware of anything within the 1890s?
No, only if we are partnering with an 1862. So that's why we are going the capacity building grant route for the 1890s.
Okay, thanks you guys.
Yeah, we've addressed this, and so hopefully something would change, but that's kind of the law that it's designed the way it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else? We still have several minutes if folks have questions or want to make comments or.
So Ed, I had somebody chat and ask the question about the newsletter. I will check with Abby Hassletler, our program manager at Purdue, about the directors, deans and directors being on that distribution mailing list. I think the first one just went out here at the end of February, early March, and it might have just gone to our delegate list. But we can most certainly can get that out to the extension deans and directors so that you're getting that newsletter information too.
Okay, great. That would be helpful. Are there any other questions? Are there any final comments from Nick or Cheryl, Ashley, Angie?
I think one of the, if I'm going to jump in here again, as long as we got some open time. You know, I mentioned that in 2005, all 50 states, territories were signed up. And as part of our 25th anniversary this year, the executive committee last week decided that we would like to do a re-upping, a re-signing, a recommitment to extension. So we'll be coming to you with those cooperative agreements and asking you to recommit to the involvement here and participate in Eden. It really is your network to help you out. And I think you've heard from Ashley and Angie both about the benefits in those times that are needed. I know I've also been in conversation these last few days with the point of contacts from Alaska after the earthquake. And, you know, Linda Tannehill said, you know, if I hadn't been going to that annual meeting, if I didn't know people in the network, when that earthquake hit, I wouldn't have gotten that information as fast as we were able to get it. And basically, they got the information they needed from the point at time I left my office till I made a 21-mile commute home. The network had acted and got them the information that they were looking for. So as you see those letters coming from the executive committee, you know, please, you know, have the conversations around Eden, and hopefully we can make that next step beyond the 25 years and continue all of your good works and working together for the future.
So Cheryl, thanks for bringing up those agreements, and that's one of the things that I wanted to hit on as well, is we need to get those updated. And Sandy posted in the chat box that this webinar is going to be made available, and that'll be sent out through Monday Morning Minute. And so Ed, we can work with you and Sandy on getting some messaging out as a follow-up to this, and particularly in light of what Cheryl talked about there about this is a 25th year anniversary, and we also want to make sure that our agreements that we have with all the institutions are up to date. So that'd be another plug of how we can get this information out, Cheryl.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you guys.
Yeah, so thanks on behalf of myself as the liaison to Eden, on behalf of ECOP, and Ed, thanks for providing us this opportunity to provide an update today. Thank you.
Thank you all for taking the time to do that. We appreciate that. It's been very informative, and I hope folks have had some of their questions answered, and we look forward to everyone signing on to those updated MOUs. So thank you all very much, and we appreciate everyone's time today.